Ladies and gentlemen, adversity doesn't wait for a convenient time to strike. It shows up without warning. A phone call, a diagnosis, a layoff, a betrayal, a breaking point. And yet, the story of America is not a story of easy roads. It's a story of resilience. In this 8-hour journey, we're going deep into what it really takes to rise again.
What?
Not just motivational fluff, but the raw truth, backed by psychology, real stories, and practical tools that people across the U.S. are using to overcome the hardest chapters of their lives. If you've ever felt like giving up, if you've been knocked down more times than you can count, this message is for you. Because adversity doesn't define you. What you do next does. Life hits hard, and when it does, the first response isn't always courage. It's confusion. It's shutdown. It's why me. In this first hour, we talk about the shockwave, that moment when life flips without warning. Whether it's a health scare, a family loss, financial ruin, or a quiet mental breakdown, adversity has one goal: to test what you're made of. But the first step to resilience isn't strong. It's not where the world reaches up. Well, the world makes more money than you reach it up. Are you more money right now? Now, where's the same part of the goal that you reach out to? It's not where you... We walk through how Americans experience and often avoid pain through distraction, denial, and overfunctioning. But here's the truth. You can't heal what you don't feel. You'll learn why pushing through too fast leads to burnout, not growth. How to sit with discomfort without collapsing into it. The science of acute stress response: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Grounding tools to keep you emotionally regulated when everything feels like too much. We also share stories from real Americans who faced the unthinkable and what they did in the first 24 to 72 hours that shaped the rest of their comeback. A firefighter who lost his home, a woman whose cancer returned after remission, a college student forced to drop out after losing her parents. Each story has a single thread. They chose to feel, not flee. Because the first hour after the fall isn't about climbing, it's about surviving the hit. The fall doesn't define you. Reclaiming your identity after loss. When adversity hits, it often doesn't just break your heart. It shakes your identity. You're not just grieving what happened. You're grieving who you thought you were. A job loss can leave you questioning your value. A divorce can make you doubt your worth. A diagnosis can erase who you were yesterday and leave you staring at a future you never asked for. In this hour, we confront the emotional identity crisis that adversity creates. Because for many Americans, the hardest part of falling isn't the pain, it's the confusion. Who am I now? This segment speaks directly to anyone who's lost a role, a dream, a loved one, or even a sense of self. You'll learn why identity loss is one of the most under-recognized mental health wounds in adversity, how to separate your value from your circumstances, why trying to go back to who you were is a trap, and how to reclaim it. The process of grieving your old self to make room for your next self. You'll hear stories from a retired NFL player learning who he is beyond the game, a single mother in Mississippi rebuilding after bankruptcy, a young man in recovery saying goodbye to the version of himself he used to escape through addiction. This hour helps viewers begin to see adversity not just as destruction, but as a turning point. Because you are more than what happened to you. And you don't need to rebuild who you were, you get to create who you're becoming. Resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about rising different. Power of perspective. Turning setbacks into setups. When life knocks you off your path, most people panic. They feel lost, confused, and defeated because the plan changed. The job didn't work out, the relationship ended, the dream slipped through their fingers. And the instinct is to say, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. But here's a truth that changes lives. It might actually be the best. This hour is all about the power of perspective. Because adversity, by itself, doesn't break you or build you. It just reveals you. What determines your future is not the obstacle, but the story you choose to tell about it. You'll hear how some of the most successful and resilient people in America have faced devastating setbacks and used perspective to flip the script. A man who lost his business and later discovered his passion through failure. A woman who was rejected from medical school and became one of the country's most respected wellness leaders. A high school senior who was cut from his basketball team and went on to write a best-selling book about perseverance. In this hour, we break down the science of cognitive reframing, how your brain adapts based on the meaning you assign to events, the lens of learning versus the lens of loss, how to find micro wins in a season of failure, the difference between pain and purposeful pain, why the worst days often lead to the best growth if you shift the frame. We also talk about how to use language to change mindset. Instead of saying left, double quotation mark, left, double quotation mark, left, double quotation mark, why is this happening to me? You'll walk away from this hour with tools to change how you see what happened. Because when your vision changes, so does your life direction. Setbacks don't stop resilient people. They redirect them. They sharpen them. They position them for something better, stronger, and truer. And one day, if you keep walking through the fire, you'll look back and say, that wasn't the end of me. That was the beginning of who I was meant to be. Building grit, the daily discipline of getting back up. Resilience isn't a moment. It's not one big comeback. It's daily grit. It's waking up when no one's clapping. It's doing what you said you'd do, even when you're tired, scared, or uncertain. It's getting back up again and again when life keeps trying to knock you out. This hour is about grit, not the flash or the fame, but the behind-the-scenes toughness that builds real mental and emotional muscle. Because in America today, we don't need more perfect people. We need more gritty people, the kind who show up with discipline, heart, and relentless focus, especially when it's hard. You'll learn what grit actually is, passion and persistence over time, even under pressure. Why resilience is a habit, not a personality trait. How to train your brain to do hard things without quitting. The difference between motivation, short-term, and discipline, long-term. How to structure your day, mindset, and recovery routines around emotional stamina. We walk through powerful grit-building methods. The 5-minute rule. Start small, but always start. Emotional layering. Stack effort on top of pain, not behind it. Progress journaling. Build visual proof that you're growing. Frustration tolerance training. Strengthen your bounce-back muscle with micro-adversity. Cold showers, early alarms, challenge reps. How to talk to yourself like a coach, not a critic. You'll hear stories from a high school janitor who studied at night for 7 years to become a nurse, a man who lost both legs in a construction accident and trained to run again with prosthetics, a single mom in Detroit who went back to school in her 40s to build a better life for her daughter. They didn't get up because it was easy. They got up because they decided failure wasn't final. And that's what grit really is. Choosing not to quit, even when no one would blame you if you did. This hour reminds you, you don't need perfect conditions. You need consistency. One small act of strength, repeated again and again, becomes a legacy of resilience. The inner circle, how your environment shapes your strength. You can be doing everything right, reading the books, showing up, putting in the work, but if your environment is toxic, your resilience will leak away, little by little. You are not just fighting adversity, you're fighting the people, places, and patterns that keep you stuck in it. This hour is about your inner circle, the community around you, the energy you absorb, the support you get or don't, and the messages you're fed every day. Because even the strongest people can't grow in toxic soil. and even the most wounded can thrive in the right environment. We explore the three types of people in your life: builders, drainers, and distractors. How to audit your circle without guilt. Why proximity is power, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. How negativity, doubt, or apathy in your environment kills your momentum. How to build a resilience tribe that supports your rise, not your stagnation. You'll also learn how to spot quiet sabotage. Friends who pretend to support you, but pull you backward with jokes, jealousy, or doubt. How to handle loneliness during your growth season. Because healing often means outgrowing people who benefited from your brokenness. How to communicate your boundaries without apology. Why sometimes letting go of people is an act of survival, not selfishness. Where to find your people: online communities, support groups, masterminds, mentors, or even that one person who gets it. You'll hear stories like a Navy veteran who cut off an entire friend group to stay sober and gained his life back. A corporate VP who left a toxic job and found healing in a purpose-driven nonprofit. A young woman who left an emotionally abusive relationship and rebuilt her identity through support groups and women's circles. This hour teaches you this: resilience isn't just internal, it's relational. You don't need people who tolerate you. You need people who activate you, who remind you of your worth, challenge your excuses, and hold you to your highest standard. Your environment isn't just a backdrop, it's the battlefield. And your next level may require you to leave some comfort zones and some people behind. The power of purpose, turning pain into fuel. Adversity will test you, but purpose will pull you. It will carry you through seasons that feel unbearable. It will make you move when you want to quit. Purpose is what transforms survival into meaning and pain into fuel. In this hour, we dive into what makes resilient people unstoppable. They find purpose inside the pain. You've seen it before. Someone who lost everything and still chose to help others. Someone who turned heartbreak into art, illness into activism, or rock bottom into a platform. These aren't superhumans. They're people who refuse to let their suffering be wasted. This part of the speech teaches you why purpose gives pain direction, how having a why strengthens your mental and emotional endurance. The difference between ambition and purpose: one drives results, the other drives resilience. How to discover purpose within adversity, even if it's small or personal. Why purpose doesn't have to be public, it just has to be real. You'll also learn how to ask the right questions. Left double quotation mark. What did I survive that others still struggle with? Left double quotation mark. What do I now understand that I didn't before? Left double quotation mark. Who needs the version of me that made it through this? How purpose rewires your brain for growth through meaning. How to turn your story into service, even if it's just encouraging one person. And you'll hear stories of Americans who discovered their purpose through adversity. A woman who lost her son to addiction and now runs recovery outreach for other parents. A formerly incarcerated man who started a program to help teens avoid the same path. A man who used his journey through depression to coach others out of darkness. Because purpose doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it power. And in a culture obsessed with success, purpose reminds us that it's not just what we do, but why we do it, that gives us the strength to keep showing up. Your pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to wake up your calling. And once you tap into that, there's no going back. Faith, grit, and the unknown. Resilience and uncertainty. Sometimes the scariest part of adversity isn't what already happened. It's what comes next. The unknown, the waiting, the silence, the uncertainty that creeps in after the dust settles. No answers, no guarantees, just space and fear. In this hour, we explore what it takes to stay resilient when you don't know what's next. Because life rarely gives you a map, especially when you're rebuilding. And yet, some of the strongest people in America have learned to walk through uncertainty with grit and faith. This is about mental stamina, trusting yourself, even when you're scared, holding the line when no one's cheering, moving forward when the path is invisible. You'll learn how to build uncertainty tolerance, the emotional skill of staying calm when life is blurry, the difference between control and confidence, why faith doesn't always mean religion. It's about inner certainty in uncertain times, how to break paralysis with small action, tools to anchor yourself when the future's foggy, routines, beliefs, reflection, connection. We'll explore. Left, double quotation mark. Need to know everything, take the next step. Need to know everything to take the next step. Uncertainty is where strength is born. How to hold space for hope and doubt to coexist and still act. Why faith and grit go hand in hand. Grit keeps you moving. Faith gives you a reason. You'll hear powerful stories. A farmer in Nebraska rebuilding after a tornado destroyed everything. A woman waiting for a transplant who still wakes up grateful every day. An entrepreneur who lost everything in the 2020 pandemic and now mentors young Black business owners across the U.S. These people didn't have all the answers. They had something stronger. Belief. Belief that if they kept showing up, kept doing the hard thing, kept leaning into faith, not everything would be fixed overnight, but they would be unshakable. Because real resilience isn't about certainty. It's about showing up anyway. Rise different. Writing your next chapter with power. You made it through. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe with scars. Maybe limping. But you made it. And that's not just survival. It's transformation. Because the goal of resilience isn't to go back to normal. It's to rise different. In this final core hour, we talk about how to move forward with power. Not just trying to forget what happened, but letting your adversity refine you into someone stronger, wiser, and more aligned. You'll reflect on your journey and learn why you don't owe anyone your old self back, how to carry the lessons, not the wounds, how to build a new vision of life after adversity, based on truth, not fear, how to trust again, hope again, and dream again, how to stop living in defense mode and start creating your future on offense. We cover the Resilience Journal exercise. Track what adversity revealed about you. Identity expansion. Becoming the next version of you, not a copy of the past. Power questions to build direction. Left double quotation mark. What do I now know that I must share? Left double quotation mark. Who can I help because of what I've walked through? What kind of future do I want to build with this strength? The story of a 9/11 survivor who became a grief counselor for others. A former addict who now runs job training programs for young men coming out of prison. A teacher who returned to the classroom after cancer. Not the same, but stronger and more present than ever. Because resilience isn't the end of the story. It's the start of a new chapter, written by a version of you that has already proven they can survive hell and come back with hope. The confidence to be seen, rebuilding after shame, fear, or failure. Let's talk about something that haunts more Americans than we realize. The fear of being seen after you've fallen. You've been through the storm. You survived the divorce, the debt, the diagnosis, the public failure. But now what? Now you have to walk back into the Word. And for many, that's the hardest part. This hour tackles the emotional weight of shame, the silent shadow that follows you after adversity. Not guilt, which says, I did something bad, but shame, which says, I am something bad. It's the voice in your head whispering, left double quotation mark, left double quotation mark, left double quotation mark. They'll never forget what I lost. But here's the truth. Confidence is not the absence of shame. It's the decision to rise anyway. In this hour, you'll learn how to recognize shame's tactics: isolation, overcompensation, perfectionism, comparison. Why failure doesn't shrink your worth. It reveals your strength. How to separate your story from your self-worth. How to rebuild confidence step by step, even when you feel broken. How to speak about your pain without apologizing for it. We explore the psychology of shame and courage. Shame shields, people-pleasing, hiding, blaming, avoiding. Vulnerability as power. How telling your story gives you ownership, not weakness. Why confidence comes from truth, not from pretending, performing, or proving. How to be seen again on your terms. You'll hear powerful testimonies. A man who went bankrupt, then rebuilt and spoke on stages about financial resilience. A woman who hid her domestic abuse for years and now runs a women's empowerment circle. A college dropout who started his own business after admitting school wasn't his path. They didn't wait until they were perfect to show up. They showed up as they were, and they were enough. Because being seen isn't about proving your worth. It's about owning it, battle scars and all. This hour is your reminder. You are not what you lost. You are what you lived through. Walk into the room with your head high. The world needs the real you. Emotional resilience in relationships. Healing, boundaries, and growing together. Adversity doesn't just test your strength. It tests your relationships. When life gets hard, people either come closer or they disappear. And sometimes, the hardest part of suffering isn't the pain itself. It's who wasn't there when you needed them most. This hour goes deep into emotional resilience within relationships, family, friendships, partnerships, and work. Because adversity exposes emotional fractures, old wounds, unspoken expectations, codependency, toxic ties, and imbalanced support. And here's the truth. You can be strong and still need others, but you can't build connection without boundaries. You can't keep peace with everyone if it costs you your own. In this hour, you'll learn how adversity can strain or strengthen relationships, how to identify emotionally safe people versus emotionally draining people, why healing requires you to outgrow certain dynamics, how to communicate your needs without guilt, how to say no and mean it without being cruel, how to repair relationships without repeating old patterns. We talk about attachment styles in adversity, how we react when we're scared, stressed, or triggered, the drama triangle, rescuer, persecutor, and how to step out of it, how to stay grounded in conflict without exploding, shutting down, or shrinking, why some relationships can be healed and others must be released. You'll hear stories like a couple that almost divorced during infertility and learned to rebuild through therapy, a man who reconnected with his estranged father after 20 years through shared grief, a woman who cut off contact with a toxic sibling and finally found peace. Relationships require emotional intelligence, especially during adversity. You don't need perfect communication, but you do need honest communication. And boundaries are not walls, they're bridges to healthier connection. You can still love people and protect your peace. You can still be kind and say no. You can be resilient and also relational. Because resilience isn't just what happens inside you, it's also the energy you allow around you. Becoming unbreakable, living as a resilient leader. You've made it through the hardest hours. You've rebuilt your identity, regained your voice, set your boundaries, and claimed your story. Now, it's time to become something greater. A leader, not in title, not in status, but in spirit. This final hour is about what it means to become unbreakable, not because you've never struggled, but because you've survived and transformed. Resilient leadership isn't about being loud, perfect, or fearless. It's about living your life in a way that gives others permission to rise too. Here, we shift from personal resilience to purpose-driven impact. How to live your truth publicly and powerfully. How to turn your survival story into a source of hope for others. Why the world doesn't need more influencers? It needs expanders. People who show others what's possible through how they live. How to lead through integrity, vulnerability, and emotional strength. Why you don't have to have it all together to lead you. The habits of emotionally strong leaders. Calm under fire, honest under pressure, connected even when afraid. How to lead your family, your team, or your community through adversity. How to create safe space for others while protecting your own energy. How to build a legacy of strength, not perfection, but presence. This hour brings you stories from a school teacher who turned her classroom into a healing space for children affected by violence, a Marine vet who started a nonprofit for trauma recovery, a formerly homeless man now leading youth mentorship programs across the Midwest. These aren't famous people. These are resilient leaders. Ordinary humans doing extraordinary things because of what they've lived through. This closing hour invites you to stop asking, why me? And start asking, how can I use what broke me to build something bigger than me? Because the most powerful people aren't the ones who've never fallen. They're the ones who fell, got back up, and then reached back to pull someone else forward. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not behind. You're building something eternal. You are not done. You're just beginning. Go be the leader you were shaped to be. Because resilience wasn't just for you. It's for everyone watching you rise. If you made it through all of this journey, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not a victim of your story. You are the author of your comeback. You didn't just survive adversity. You learned. You grew. You became. But this isn't where it ends. This is where it begins. Because there are people who need the version of you that walked through the fire and came out stronger. Listen, drop a comment. What part of your story are you ready to own? Listen to the BBC. Share this video with someone who feels like they're at rock bottom right now. Leo, subscribe, because this space is for real people with real stories who refuse to quit. Whether you're a mother, father, student, veteran, survivor, or leader in the making, you are not alone. Your strength is your legacy. And your next chapter, it's going to be your greatest one yet. I'm proud of you. Let's keep rising together.